So early on, though, I do remember telling Bob one time, that this really wasn't what either of us had signed up for, and that, if one of us wanted to leave, we could. However, whoever left was going to have to take Connor. And I said, I don't know about you, but I'm not leaving because I'm not taking Connor. It takes two of us. I mean, tried to keep it lighthearted, but I mean, it was a lot of work. He was tough, just because behaviors and things we had to, help him work through. But Connor did progress and learned to walk and ride a bike and, had to work harder at everything in life, but turned out to be a really good young man. Ended up being able to, graduate from high school and went on to a 2-year program down at University of Missouri, UCM, called Thrive, a program that I found out about that's for kids with special needs. And he ended up riding the train down there and lived in a dorm with a roommate for 2 years and really taught him a lot of independence. And Connor is quite the character because he learned that he liked to drink beer after 21, and he wanted the college experience, as he talked about a lot. So he got that, and ended up, he's doing well now in life. He's living independently in an apartment. He's 28 years old and works at a golf course Monday through Friday from like 10 to 3. And he's always talking about how stressed he is, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I would love your life. That sounds good to me. But he's definitely been, we thought, boy, that was, our biggest challenge ever in life. And we had a lot of low lows and then a lot of really high highs, though, when he did great and did things. So that was all wonderful. Turned out, it continues to do well. He's not able to drive, but he has services that he's able to get rides to work every day, and like I said, lives pretty independently, so it's great. And he's 5 minutes from home, so we do see him most every weekend, and sometimes during the week as well. So that's our Connor, our youngest. Our oldest two, Megan, who is now, Megan's in her Megan and Carl, and those two, were kind of my easy ones. Both smart, athletic. Both of them had a lot of friends. Life was easy. Nothing major either, just two good kids growing up. I know sometimes it probably wasn't easy having a brother like Connor with special needs in the family, but they both were great to him and very important, I think, in his life for sure. So, but where our story really takes a turn is when, Megan and Carl both went to K-State, and Megan, they were in sororities and fraternities down the street from each other, so they had a lot of fun. They were really good friends, had a blast. After Megan graduated, I guess Carl was a sophomore at K-State, and his spring semester ended up having kind of a mental health breakdown. And he had a manic episode where he didn't sleep for days. We weren't aware of any of this, of course, because we weren't there. And finally, we found out, and it was a long story, but we got him home and got him to a doctor, and unbelievably, we found out he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which, come to find out, it happens often to young 20-year-old males, 20-something, early, that age group. Very smart young men, some women too, of course, but it came on him and ravaged him. That semester he had to leave school, and that whole summer he just then went to a really low depression and slept a lot and just didn't do a lot and it was so hard to see because Carl, you know, in high school had been a 3-sport athlete. He was so handsome. I mean, he is so handsome, and had a beautiful smile, was just kind, had so many friends, you know, and to see this illness kind of take over his life was devastating to us. But he was able to kind of pull through it. He was on medication for a while there, and did a lot of things with exercise and eating healthy, and he returned to K-State in the fall. Had to do an extra year, but did graduate with an industrial engineering degree, and he was hired right out of K-State by ExxonMobil, and was went out to Washington, D.C. for training, and then from there they were going to get placed someplace in the country, and his goal was to be somewhere where he could play golf all year round, and because he was actually a sales engineer, so he had that sales personality and connected with people as well as being an engineer, very smart. And so he got kind of the top pick and got to move to Hermosa Beach, California. So his territory was the state of California and Nevada and Hawaii. So a big territory, big job, but met two really great guys that he moved in to room with out there. We went out and visited him right away because I kind of wanted to eyeball everything, where he was, who he was living with. I met two really good guys. Carl had an amazing girlfriend during college, but shortly after he moved out there, he decided to break that off just because, I mean, he was young and they were a long way from each other, and I think he just kind of wanted to live life a little bit. So, I mean, we understood that it was hard because we loved Hannah and they were just such a cute couple. So life was good. He was living his dream until 5 years after that initial onset in college, he had another mental break. And he was at a sales meeting in Houston, Texas, and we got a call on a Sunday night that Carl had been a missing person for 2 days, and no one could get a hold of him. They'd done a welfare check of his hotel room, and he wasn't there. I mean, it was the worst feeling. And so Bob and I were on a plane the next morning. We arrived in Houston. It was pouring down rain, and I just remember looking at homeless people under bridges and just thinking, oh my God, like, where is my son? This huge city, where is he, and where has he been? And oh my God, are we ever gonna find him? And by the grace of God, he had gotten on a little commuter train and to try to sleep, I guess, that second night, and he was soaking wet but well dressed, you know, guy. And so a police officer did come and bring him, picked him up, and just brought him back to the hotel where he was staying, which we were there waiting with some of these people from Exxon. And I mean, that was just the greatest feeling ever, to get him back to us and get him, you know, wrap our arms around him, get him dry clothes, a good meal, a warm bed. We stayed with him all night, and you know, I don't know, I guess the last minute I brought some medicine with me because I knew he probably hadn't had medicine for a while, and his brain was probably running 1,000,000 miles an hour, which it was. And so I gave him some of his medicine he had taken before and just said, you know, sleep, get some rest, you need to give your brain a rest. And so we did, and the next day we drove back from Houston with Carl back to Kansas City because they advised us not to get on an airplane. And during that drive, though, it just was so apparent, you know, just how he just wasn't himself at all, and his mind was not working, you know, rationally. And I tried to reach when I was during bathroom breaks or something, when I had a moment to call, I tried to reach the doctor he had seen when he was in college. But because it had been 5 years, he was no longer in their system, and they couldn't get him in. And it was like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Like, what are we gonna do? We've got to get him help. And so we made it back to Kansas. And at the time, so Exxon was working with him. Of course, his insurance was Kaiser, which was out of California, and nothing covered it here. And so he, finally convinced us. He's like, Mom, I've got to get home. I just need to get back there, and I can, start getting the help I need and do what I'm told, because they did give him a protocol, what he needed to do to get back to work. And so he really, really wanted to get back to work. And so kind of with open hands, we had to let him go and go back to California. And that was in February of 2015. And in April, they fired him. And I think they used some reason for something he said or whatever when he was in Houston. And I mean, it just devastated Carl, because he worked so hard at that job and was so proud of it. And to have lost that just really, really, really devastated him.